Okay, formally, good morning, colleagues. I'm sure you did cover this article, and then as we have just reflected on it, which means definitely you went through the article. So the article is about decolonizing knowledge. Then when we decolonize knowledge, we are saying we have something that we have generated through our subconscious mind, unconscious mind, and then we also reason using our conscious mind. So the article then is taking us through these three elements of our minds to say that when you think or experience something, you then store what you experience via your subconscious mind. So when you store there via your subconscious mind, it means you will retrieve it whenever the time is right. Therefore, retrieving it then will mean you are adjusting your ways of doing things. You are learning something, you are becoming a new person, and then in your becoming a new person, it means you are starting a journey of dealing with the issues that are important in your life. So this article then, what this article then is presenting is hello? Oh my goodness. Okay, so in terms of, let me unmute this. So in terms of then bringing what you have discovered in your previous years, we then go on and start to say how we decolonize the mind, or what is the decolonization of the mind. Decolonizing the mind means then you are entering a process of critiquing what you have. So in other words, you reflect on whatever knowledge that you have, you critique it, and then renew it. So each time when you renew your experience, that is your knowledge, you are doing a process of decolonization. So decolonization now is saying to you, you have to go back and remember where you generated what you know today. Because for example, if you know a leopard, then you have seen it in a space where the light was limited. So when it was limited, you have seen it as if it is dark or it's black without the spots. But when you increase the light on what you are observing there, observing the leopard, you'll see that the leopard has these kind of spots that are different from what you have seen when you did not have the light. So in other words, our perception keep on changing. It's like the pictures I gave you on Wednesday, where you started to say, there are people here, yet I only had dolphins. I did not have people. So what then the world is doing to you is that is adding into your subconscious mind something that will impress you and something that you can use for your survival. So when you use it, it doesn't mean that that is your objective reality. You are using that to control your objective reality, but you don't know your objective reality. For example, if you have this computer has some icons, it will show you some icons. And then you use those icons to control the real world of computers. But if you can go to computer engineer and find out from him or her how many circuits were used in building this computer in order to display those icons that you are using, then you may end up saying, no, I don't want to use computer anymore. So the circuits that are there, they are irritating and this and this. But if the engineers build a user interface for you, just icons, nice icons and that, and give that to you, you like it in such a way that it will capture you and use it all the time without knowing the origin or the objective reality of these computers. So you are not interested in objective reality of them, but you are interested in the usage. So that's what pragmatists will tell you, to say that we enjoy the usage of what we have. So it's the user interface. We use that to survive. But it doesn't mean that we know the reality of these computers. It's same thing applies to us. We don't know exactly where we are in this body, but we can see that we are using this body to be happy, to do all what we are doing. When we use this body, it's just the user interface. We have fingers, we have this, and all these things are beautiful. But we don't know how these things are constructed, because we believe that we have lungs, we have this, we have our fingers has this and this, they have this and this. But that's what we believe. We don't know the objective reality of them. So now the journey that we are taking is that we need to take a journey where we start to understand these things around us. Understand yourself so that you can then talk about other people. But at the moment, we are mostly captured by the outside world. We don't know the inside world. We are captured by the outside world. That's why it's easy for people to attract us with what they need for us, as if we need those things. But only to find that we may not need those, but those people who are giving that to us, they need those things for us. So this article then is based on decolonizing that, the issues of technology. So how these learners how these students managed to deal with the power of technology that was influencing them. And also they had to go through to decolonize the power of pedagogy. So pedagogy, these are the curriculum concepts, like goals, assessment, and all those. So they were decolonized by these particular students. These were first-year students that managed to deal with this issue. And then also they had to decolonize mathematics content so that it was going to fit according to their need, because they came with their experience from their schools, from their families, then they had to decolonize that. So what this paper has done then is that it gave them the opportunity to reflect on how they understand technology, because technology has been representing the social world for them, the societal world. So in other words, it has to do with the issues of competence-based, where people are socializing and learn together using different forms of technology. Then it also gave them the opportunity to start to say, what about the content now? The content that they have there, which represent the performance curriculum. Remember, in performance curriculum, people prescribe the content. When they prescribe the content, then people are expected to follow the content that is prescribed. When then you go to pedagogical knowledge, then it's a part where you deal with all other components, all other concepts of curriculum that are not technology, which are resources, or that are not content, which is content knowledge. Therefore, those are the other issues that one has to deal with. So, so this paper then divided these curriculum concepts into three categories. There's category one, which is technological knowledge, that you know something about technology or resources. So what are resources? Resources is a resource is anything that you use to communicate teaching or learning or research, or so that you use to communicate action. So that is technology. So technology then is divided into three. You have hardware, which are machines that we use there. And then you also have software that drives those hardware or tools. So in other words, if you are talking about hardware as a computer, you have your laptop or your desktop computer. And then after that, you need application software like Microsoft Word, Microsoft that. And also there is also other kind of software which may be issues of management software where you have where you manage your files. There are different forms of software that are in there. So if we were to use overhead projector as your hardware, your software then will be transparencies, because transparencies are material that carry that information in order to be displayed by this machine of yours, which is your hardware. And then there's the main one then, which is important to your thinking then, because you have this technology, your thinking before you use what you use, because your subconscious mind will give you exactly what you will choose, while others will choose something else. You will choose that particular one because you have that ideological resource or technology that manage your mind, that manage your activities. Because I can put here different resources or different technology, and then simple close my eyes and simple tell you to say that, please so and so teach, here are the resources. You may find that your ideological resource or technology or your ideas will just force you to choose overhead projector, because we have been using overhead projector for quite a number of years. But when you find that others will choose laptop, others will choose chalkboard, to say, no, I'm used to chalkboard or whiteboard. And so people have their own technology, which is called ideological way, according to this paper. But when others write, like Foucault, will simply say this is a technology of self, because you have your technology that has managed to build this body of yours. That technology, that intelligence, it's another technology that you have, or it's another resource that you have. Before you touch a hardware or software, something will inform you to touch it. You don't touch by mistake, but something is informing you that another technology that you need to concentrate on. So you may have a advanced hardware, advanced software, but that may not help you if your ideological resource is not in line with what is in front of you. Therefore, you have that kind of resource or technology that drives you. Whatever you have that has managed to build this body of yours and your fingers or this, it's a nice technology, or it's a nice resource that has been helping you to grow to the stage where you are. That's what we need now to interrogate in order to deal with that kind of technology. When it comes to content, there's content that is called legacy content, the print media driven content, like books, your books, and that falls under legacy, because it has been there for quite some times, and then people have been using that. But when we use that, it's structured in such a way that they usually print it for you so that you can read in the form of a book. So these particular universities or higher education institutions are interested in that because they still keep library books, etc., etc. Therefore, but when these learners come to join this institution, you'll find that these learners are talking about content knowledge, unstructured electronic driven content. So when you say to them, they must go to the library, I wonder how many can join you to going straight to the library, because they will simply say to you, can you give us a link to that book? Or can you email us that book instead of buying this book? But a long time ago, you remember that we used to buy books in numbers. You go to Adams and Greeks or Adams, you buy books there. But today, we don't buy books because they are online. When we buy them, we buy electronic books mostly. So who is doing that? These are our students. Our students are demanding that these books also move towards future content. Future content is electronically driven. Therefore, that's what they had there when we're interrogating these students. So in other terms, they use school knowledge. They use legacy content as school knowledge. When you read on what Hutley has written, she's distinguishing between school knowledge, which is that legacy content, and also everyday knowledge, which is that electronically driven content. So those are the two concepts of content that we have. So when you write, then try to write in such a way that you indicate that you understand the categories of content, that content has these two parts. If you read on what Hutley is saying, you will simply use the term school knowledge versus everyday knowledge. Or you read Bernstein will have the same thing. But when it comes to Prince K and others, they'll use legacy content, which is the print media driven content. And then you also have electronically driven content, which they call future content. So those are the two dimensions of content that are indicated. I'm sure you have seen them in the article. So now that you can see that we have already covered two parts, two concepts of curriculum concept that we have seen previously in our previous discussion. So the content is covered, the resources, which is technology in this case, is covered. So you have two concepts down already. Then you have other concepts then of curriculum, like assessment, goals, environment, you can name it, there are many. So those will fall under the category of pedagogical knowledge. So when you deconstruct or you decolonize your pedagogical knowledge, you will be dealing with the issues of assessment, issues of goals, which are objectives, etc., etc. So all those will fall under pedagogy. That's what constitutes pedagogy. So with this frame that we used here in writing this paper is called technological pedagogical knowledge. So we have differentiated between these two. So these two now are in the stage where you can take them in this particular way. So to remind you, just to remind ourselves, these are the concepts that are giving us that that kind of so these are the concepts, these are specific concepts that are giving us a drive to write what we are writing. So these are concepts that drive our writing, that drive our reading. That's why I said, try to identify these in your reading. So that even in your writing, you use some of them to project your argument, because they are there for you to make sure that you use them in that particular order of your needs. So here I use this table to project them and also produce some questions that can help you to drive them. And at the same time, I have these sub-concepts that I use as signals. So you may not see goals in your writing or in your reading, but only to find that you have objectives. They are talking about objectives. Now you start to connect that dot to say, aha, here they are talking about goals, which means their goals are driven by objectives. Or you may see them talking about certain theories to say, when I teach, I use a specific theory, then you can see that, oh, they are talking about the ideological way resource. Is one of those concepts there. Or they may not talk about assessment, formative assessment, summative assessment, but they may talk about assessment of learning, which is summative assessment. You see, you need to read about this concept, whichever paper you read, try to see how many of these curriculum concepts are represented in that paper, so that you would then start to understand them, because you know these, and then you need to read more on these, you see, on these curriculum concepts, so that they will be your key in reading what you are reading and also in writing what you are writing. So you have these concepts, we have been discussing them like that. And also this article then produced this as the framework of identifying or positioning these curriculum concepts. So in this case then, because it was mathematics, the content of this performance curriculum or content knowledge, it was trigonometry, this side, but when it comes to technological knowledge, is geometry, because they were drawing there using a different kind of drawing, using a specific software. So they managed to do that. But what then is bringing these two giants together, the trigonometry and geometry, is algebra, because anyone, when people start to talk, they talk about counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So all these kids start with that. Then it becomes that becomes their personal way of doing things in starting mathematics. By the time you teach them how to do trigonometry, geometry, they've already used the journey of counting. They've started counting. Therefore, algebra is personal to them. So it forms that pedagogical knowledge, which is personal to them. And then when you go to aims, the goals here used to be, when it comes to content knowledge, is when you deal with the teacher's objectives. Remember, objectives belong to the teachers, and then outcomes are goals that belongs to the student. They are achieved by student. So when the teachers achieve, when learners achieve outcomes, then teachers will then realize that they have achieved their objective. But what is personal then? Usually, if you have aims are open enough to accommodate whatever kind of goal. It can be outcome as a goal, or it can be objective as a goal, but it can accommodate both. In terms of assessment, we have a summative assessment, which may represent a performance curriculum. Remember, we said in performance curriculum, which is driven by content, we said we use summative assessment because we are looking what is absence. We are looking for absence instead of what is present. So when you get 95%, we expect you to get 90%. Therefore, we'll concentrate on the 5% that you are missing instead of concentrating on the 95%. That's what is happening there. So when these issues of assessment are unfolding, you can see how the concepts are used there. Technologically, where we socialize technological knowledge, we always have peers, people who are in our group, WhatsApp group, Facebook group. Then when we work there, we work according to the support we are getting from those who are in our WhatsApp group or in our Facebook group, whatever social media you may be using. But when it comes to formative assessment is clear there because it can accommodate both the peer and the summative assessment. Because what is formative assessment, which is assessment for learning? Assessment for learning or formative assessment is whatever question you ask people in order for you to establish their readiness of what you want to offer them. So when you greet them, you are starting the process of formative assessment. Then you go through all these. So all these concepts, then you will come across them one way or the other. So you must start the journey of reading about them and start to understand them. The difference between objectives and outcomes, the difference between aims and objectives. Those are the issues that you need to start now to use in order to help you to come closer to your objective reality. Because right now, the reality that you have, you are controlling reality where you are teaching your learners, but you don't guarantee that all these learners, after teaching them, they will be able to pass with 100%, which means something is missing that you need to concentrate on. What is that? Is their personal knowledge, which is driven by pedagogical issues. So that represent their internal intelligence. So that is the part that you need to touch. You remember the example I gave you last time where I said, when this content here is content knowledge, when our professionals will come to say to us, meat is healthy, we will believe that and we'll all eat meat. And then when it comes to our societies here again, our grandfathers and grandmothers will be eating meat. Then we started to do what? To believe that meat is helping us to build our bodies and that and that. But when you come to your personal knowledge, exactly your personal experience, that's where now you start to say, okay, what is the story for me behind the meat? That's when you can now tell a story. If you are allergic to meat, you will give us a story which will be different from that of the professionals and that of your society. You will give us a story that is closer to your objective reality. That's when you, so now how do you decolonize this content then? So it was clear then that in terms of this study that a pragmatic position is better here, because pragmatic position is saying that yes, a meat can be healthy, but healthy to who? Yes, meat can build someone, but who is that someone who can be built by meat? Therefore, we need to allow the person who has to eat the meat to first reflect. After reflection, then we can start to say, the test today will be about the meat or stories of meat instead of the importance of meat. Because if we say the importance of meat, only those who are not allergic to meat, who are coming from the professional, the performance curriculum will benefit, because for them, everything is in black and white, is written there. All what they do, they memorize what it's written, and they'll get that with 100%. Because if you say meat, is healthy, you have some factors of healthiness, and then they are written somewhere. All what they need to do is to go there and then read those factors and reproduce them. They will get 100% after that. But this side, when it comes to that, they will have to go to their elders and find out from them to say, how many people were eating meat during your time, grandfather or grandmother? Then those will tell the story, the grannies will tell those stories. Then we take those stories. But now what we'll miss there is the story about those who are allergic to meat, but they are forced, they are colonized to eat meat because they don't reflect back and understand that I always become sick after eating meat. But they are not worried about that. They will eat meat today, they become sick, but they will continue to eat it because they are colonized by the professionals or by their societies in such a way that for them, they don't know their personal part of what they are doing. All what they do, they follow what is there. Now that you are doing this kind of this discussion, whenever you do something, first ask some questions. How come that I'm doing this? I have this. Where is it coming from? Then you check if you are not allergic to it. And then if you are allergic to it, you tell a story that will help whosoever gave you that knowledge or that information. That there are people who are different, who can come from another side. So this paper then has those three things that are captured there, which is technological knowledge with specific concepts, which represent a concept of resources in terms of our curriculum concept. And then we have content that represent the content in terms of our curriculum concept. Then we have pedagogy, which represent all other components that are not content, that are not technological. So they are represented there. So when you read, you can read more. So this paper then brought in critical paradigm. It has used the critical paradigm and combined critical paradigm with action research. So when these two are combined, they were able to produce what we called pragmatic action of what these students were doing. So students were doing mathematics, and then when they were doing so, they started now to have these issues, and then pragmatic action was clear there that they were influenced by those pragmatic actions. So what are the what is the use of this pragmatic action? Because pragmatic action, it's about interrogating your own experience. Use your conscious mind to interrogate your subconscious mind, and then when you do that, you will be empowered, because even if you are oppressed or you are marginalized, it's easy for you to start to say, no, 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 hang on, hang on, hang on. All these years, I've been eating meat and then I've been suffering. Therefore, let me check what is happening to me. Then when we meet you, while we knew that you were eating meat, and then when we come across you at the age of maybe 25 years, we'll find that you have become a vegetarian. Then you start to say, hang on, you used to eat meat, and then you start to tell us to say that, no, I was eating meat because it was part of what we were doing, we were eating at home or in our communities. But at the end of the day, I was suffering. Then I discovered that it's because of meat that I used to suffer. I used to, when you remember that I was always in a situation where I was sick and that, then I discovered that I'm allergic to meat. That's why now I'm not eating meat. You see now, that's pragmatic action that you have used to reflect on what you are, and then you started to treat things as they come, as they are really to you. So that's kind of objective reality where you start to interrogate what. So in teaching, you do the same. When we have been using a content-centered approach, or what you call learner-centered approach, when we are using that so much that your learners were not getting 100%, you now need to change, to say, no, no, no. I've never had one class that has managed to have all learners who achieved 100% in my subject. Or maybe I've never have distinctions in my subject, which means the method that you may be using, maybe you are too professional to use content-centered, which is performance curriculum. Or it may happen that in your teaching, you always use competence-based curriculum, which you call learner-centeredness. And in using that, you are not using it according to 8 principles. Therefore, that's the challenge that you end up coming across there. Therefore, it's the opportunity now to step back and start to say, okay, how can I now do something new that will empower my learners, at the same time will empower me to come closer to my objective reality, so that when people ask me about my strength, I know exactly my strength is blah, 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 blah. So if you don't know that, then it gives us a challenge, because it's not easy for you to penetrate this world of teaching profession. Okay, but when it comes to pragmatic actions, pragmatist philosophy hold that human actions can never be separated from the past experiences and from the belief that have originated from those experiences. So all the time, you have your experience, you have your action, and then you have your belief. So those 3 things are inseparable, in such a way that human thoughts are thus intrinsically linked to action. So when you see someone doing something, you will know that that person has done it in his or her thoughts. So in other words, when you take an overhead projector, we have already used it in your thoughts. That's why now you grab it. Your hands are just doing what you have been doing through your thoughts. So your thoughts, human thoughts, then represent that element. What we see as the action is just the consequence of what you are thinking. So to understand people better is that you understand them through their actions and the consequences of their actions. So that's why now here it says people takes action based on the possibility of consequences of their action, of consequences of their action. So in other words, if you wrote something and passed, then you will try to do it again in the same way, but forgetting that the world is also advancing. So if you have had this energy when you were writing it for the first time and then managed to get 90%, if you expect that you'll get 90% again with the same energy, you may lose because it will need more energy than what you had before to get the same 90, but you need more because the world is advancing, information is advancing all the time. So what we have then, we have the actual action. Say the action is teaching. We are teaching, say I'm teaching history. I teach history, which is the action, actual action. Then my learners pass, I have 100% pass rate, but only 3 distinctions in there, in that group. That is the consequence of my teaching. Then there's also this other part now, your belief about this now, about the pass rate that you have. It may happen then that you wanted your learners to finish the school, to pass that history and go to TVET college and study there. So if they pass with maybe D pass or say they get 50%, for instance, when they get 50%, you don't have a problem because TVET colleges will take them anyway. But the same consequence, if they want to go for maybe for engineering course at any of the research intensive university, definitely you are expecting them to get A, and they also have to do mathematics, physics, and etc., etc. Therefore, the belief behind that is that they must get 100%. So the action and then the consequences are important. But what is more important than the two is the belief, on what we are doing. So in other words, you may do the action. When you do the actual action, usually it falls under performance curriculum, where they have exactly what you should do in getting that actual action. If you have to kick the ball, kick the penalty, they will tell you exactly that step 1, step 2, it should be like this. If you miss the penalty, they will say, because you did not follow the steps, as easy as that. So when you teach your learners, there's prescribed content for those who are coming from the performance curriculum. They will say, there is the content, drill them with this content. Failing which, we cannot deal with that situation because it's either you pass or you fail. How you pass only when you follow the prescribed content, because you need to follow the prescribed content. The teachers will say, correct, and then you pass. But now, there are those of us who are coming, who are aligned with outcomes, who will say, we want the consequences. We're not worried what process we have followed. You may follow whatever competence-based, performance-based, but What we need are the outcomes. They then interpret your action based on the outcome to say, yes, they've passed or they've tried. It's okay. So you convert them because they've tried. But if you were to judge them from the performance-based curriculum, it's yes or no. There's no way that when someone failed your subject, you start to say, no, but we have tried. No, there's no trying there. You do it or not do it. So the actual action is important for them. But for those who are coming, who are driven by competence-based curriculum, they lack the outcomes. Therefore, the outcomes are important. But pragmatist then, pragmatist, which is pragmatic curriculum, those will believe in saying, what is your internal intelligence? What is your theory of life? What is your theory of doing things? They will only concentrate on that more than concentrating on the actual action and the consequences. Because as long as you are happy with the consequences or you are happy with the actual action, for them, they are not much important, because for them, it's about becoming happy, reclaiming what you had when you were born. That's what you need to do. That's what you need to claim. But when you deal with those who are driven by performance issues, then they will like you to repeat the structure that is there. They will force you to do that. But if we talk to those who are coming from competence-based way of doing things, they will only tell you about outcome, that now I want to see the outcome. If you have a car, to say, I have a car, even if you have stolen that car, they are not going to worry about it, because for them, it's about the outcome, that you have a car. We wanted you to have a car, therefore you have a car. If they wanted you to pass, yes, you have passed. Whether you have passed with 50%, it doesn't matter. The fact that you have passed, they are happy, because they only take the consequences. So now, in then interrogating our knowledge, we interrogate that in such a way that we deal with the issues of content knowledge, which may be giving us actual action. We deal with the consequences of what we are doing, which may give us certain resources, certain hardware and software. Then we use those to socialize with our friends. And then if we want to pass, we can then ask our friends to give us some copies of what will be written in the test. Then we started to plagiarize, etc., etc. So for them, it's about consequence. But the pragmatists, then they'll say, no, let's trick the belief. What do you believe is that? Because there are people who believe that when they are allergic to meat, when they eat it, and then they may get some sponsorship from their family members. But if they don't eat meat, because they are allergic, they may not get those benefits of scholarship or whatever the case may be, that may be needed there. So that's what now we position this argument around. So if you read more then on this issue of pragmatic actions, you will see that the major conversation of this is that human action and the belief should go together. So the meaning of what we are doing is on the action, or is on the belief, or is on the consequences. So it depends where you are coming from. But what pragmatists will say will be that whatever you get from outside is not closer to your objective reality. It's just something for you to survive. It's just the user interface for you to survive. But what is important is what you have as your internal intelligence that has managed to build the body you have, that has helped you to become happy, at whatever stage where you were happy. Then, and again, if you are miserable, there's something wrong with that internal intelligence. So one has to focus on it and understand it. So pragmatists then believe that reality is not static. That reality, so what we call reality today may be real, may be something else tomorrow. Therefore, it's advancing as we go. Each turn, every turn of events will change what we believe. That's why when I use those pictures there, you started to see people to say, oh, I can see people, yet there were dolphins that are moving in white space, because reality keep on changing. If I add more light on what you were watching, and then you may have another picture, and then you start to tell another story. So it's moving all the time. So as the world is also doing the same thing. So it's not static, because that's why we are also changing all the time, because we are following what the world is doing around us. The universe is not static, it's moving all the time. So the world is changing all the time. So then I decided to say, let me add this tool here. So this tool is coming from Piner, William Piner, who's saying for him, curriculum is corral. So it's a race that you run. So a race, when you run that race, you need some specific concepts, some specific stages of running. So corral then has these 4 stages of running. We have the regressive moment, we have progressive moment, we have analytical moment, we have synthetical moment of our lives. So this is how life, according to William Piner, is constructed of that. You go 4 stages of your life. Sometimes we are aware of the stages, or sometimes we are not aware of the stages. But now that you are now starting to deal with this issue, you need to be aware of how these stages are shaping your life as a teacher. Because these 4 stages from Piner, they were identified through teachers' reflections. So teachers had to reflect, and then they generated this. So now, what is this first stage then? The first stage there is regressive moment. So regressive moment is where you reflect back on your process of learning, which is your education, which is formal education and informal education. Then you use that experience, or you use that knowledge or that information as a source of your action. So in other words, if you were looking after your father's cattle, your head of cattle from your father for so many years, that is the knowledge that you need to bring forward, so that when you come to school, you come with that knowledge. And then when they ask you about solving for X, you just solve for the cows that you were looking after, so that you connect the X's and Y's to the head of cattle or the goat that you were looking after. Then it will be better that way. So for teachers, then teachers went to education institutions. So when they went there, they had that formal education that they acquired there. So a regressive moment now is saying, what was your first journey or experience that you had when you were teaching for the first time, or when you were learning to teach, whenever you started the journey? What was your experience then? So you use that experience now to reflect on and then use it for your actions. Whatever actions is taken now from your previous experience. By the way, you already have that. Your subconscious mind has already stored that. For you, it's just to concentrate on use your conscious. So in other words, you need to concentrate and then remember what you had previously when you were doing teaching for the first time and when you were teaching for the first time. Then you use that as the basis of what you will be doing for your action. So that's your first part of it. And remember, when you write your major assignment 1, it will need these 4 principles of Corel. So, which means you may start your journey here by saying, I started my journey of teaching, working as a private teacher at a certain school. So when I was a private teacher there, I realized that I did not have enough knowledge of teaching. Then I registered with this particular institution. Then you see there, you are telling us about regressive moment. So in that regressive moment, you should have specific curriculum concept that drove what you were doing. Because what we were doing was driven by certain curriculum concept. Maybe when you started to teach, you were drilling learners with content, which means content is one of the most important curriculum concept that was there when you started in terms of regressive moment. That's your regressive moment. So you bring it there, you discuss it, how it happened, how did you manage things around the content. Maybe also you were concentrating more on the objectives as goals. Therefore, you need to understand and tell us what exactly was happening there. What are objectives? And then what was happening around objectives. So you give yourself maybe 3 or 4 concepts when you start to write. And then you tell us about how you have done the regressive moment. We experienced that regressive moment. After that, then you can move now to progressive moment. Progressive moment is where now you start to imagine what you want to see about yourself. Something new that you want to see in future about yourself. Then you fantasize with that. Fantasize with that using whatever experience that you have to project what you want to be in future. So there, this one there, it may have some specific concept that you use when you imagine yourself. Maybe you imagine yourself as an assessor, that you are strong in terms of assessment. Then you write about it there. Maybe you'll see creating a certain environment that will help your learners to come to your class. They all pass with 100%. That imagination, you bring it forward, give it a meaning. But each of these moments, you must have specific curriculum concept that drives that part. When you go to analytical moment there, analytical moment is where now you start to say, okay, now I've started to interrogate my past educational experience. Now I am starting and I've started to imagine what I want to be when I progress with my teaching. And then now you now start to interrogate what you have imagined with what you have experienced. Then you combine those two and deal with those two. And of course, there again, you need to identify certain curriculum concepts that are useful when you interrogate the past experience, projecting it to the future. You need to bring those, but we'll have some examples of those here. And then you have now the synthetical, so we synthesize this now to say, what now are we today? Now you have a new you with a meaningful action. Let us see how you have used the previous moments to build what you have today. So you keep on doing this. So when you keep on doing this, it will be similar to action research, which was used by this study. So action research is where you plan with your participants. You go and implement what we have planned with your participants, and then you observe this thing happening, and then you reflect on it. And then when you reflect on it, you start to say, I used overhead projector there, but it did not work well for me when I was doing the action. Therefore, let me remove it now. Let me start the process again. You replan. Now you bring laptop, data projector using laptop, and then you observe how this lesson is going well or not well. Then you move now to say, let me reflect on what I've been doing. You reflect on it, you correct what was not working, and then you strengthen what was working all the way. So in your journey then of Kural, you do the same, because you start here by interrogating your past experience. You start here, number 2, you do your imagination, you imagine doing mind map, and then you now start to say, what kind of future do I need here? You deal with it, and then after interrogating all those, what is new about me? Then you have a new kind of experience which will give you meaningful action. Then you have it covered in that way. So when you write your major assignment 1, then these are the issues that you'll be dealing with. But I'll send you an article with these moments together with the pragmatism there, and also some other issues that are important in your journey. But then remember, I started with this kind of framework to say, in whatever you do, try to make sure that you are aware of professional issues of what you are doing. So in other words, when you go to teach your class, remember the professional way of doing things, which is what is the content, what behavior do you need to see, what resources do you use, something like that. Those issues will always be there, whether you are aware of them or not. But now, in your new journey, try to become aware of them. And then there are issues that are coming from society, your society, your learners' societies. Therefore, you also need to be accommodative when it comes to that, which will help you to answer how they learn. So how they learn will depend on how much space you have given them in order to indicate those issues to you. So they should be able to construct something in order to achieve the outcome. So constructing something will happen if you give them certain activities to say, do this activity in order and make sure that by the end of this session or 20 minutes, you have produced a table. So produce a table. Then they'll go around that. Then you will have to facilitate that to say, okay, you have used Microsoft Word, we have used Microsoft Excel, we have used Microsoft Access. Please show us what content did you have in order to achieve this outcome. Then learners will help you to generate those, then you also learn as part of that process. But what will then be important is that you make sure that you give them enough time to know who they are. So in other words, to reflect on what helped them to be where they are, because something is helping them. So give them that opportunity to do that. So when you give them that opportunity, they'll start to critique, to reflect and critique on what they are doing. So in other words, they are decolonizing whatever they are victim of, because we sometimes become victim of something, but we are not aware of, because if our learning does not give us a space to reflect, then we end up in a situation where we find ourselves that no, we are unable to solve our problems using objective reality about ourselves. But what we normally do, we try to use the societal identity or professional identity, which is exactly against our internal intelligence. But if we come here, it's easy for us that we may end up using this reflection, critiquing whatever is coming to us in such a way that we'll be able to answer the why question, why things are happening like this around me. So you become natural now, because when you were born, you were naturally driven, you were happy, you were doing everything naturally. But when the society started to move you, gave you new beliefs about yourself, and then when you go to school, then school will also give you some new beliefs about yourself. Even if you are allergic to meat, they'll make you believe that no, you must eat meat even if you are allergic, because meat is healthy, yet you are just advancing the profession or you are advancing your society, but you are damaging yourself. So it's the time now to say you go back to your roots and understand who you were when you were born, and then continue with the journey. When we come to this fourth industrial revolution and the fifth industrial revolution, which was brought in by COVID, so we need those tools to be able to critique, re-critique, reflect, re-reflect. That will take us closer back to our objective reality, because our objective reality, we missed it after we were born, when we were shaped by society, and then we started to be them, to be like them. But now that you find that, but in your internal intelligence, you are allergic to these things, then that's why you are not 100% successful. Because when you come to understand your objective reality, you will see when you teach your learners, they must all get 100%. When you coach a football team, they must score goals in such a way that you know who will score goals, and then you know the time in which they'll score goals. That's when you will know your objective really. But at the moment, we can train we can teach our learners, and then some of them get 100%, others 90, others 20, because we still don't know the objective reality of teaching and learning, or the objective reality of education, and no one has that knowledge. So what we have at the moment are just the user interface. These are just tools that we use to control that objective reality that we don't know. So now, in order to go towards it, is to make sure that you reflect on when people give you something, or when people ask you to say, which school can I have in order to acquire quality education? You need to ask first, whose quality is this? Who defined that quality, the quality that you are referring? Because that quality is coming from someone. It may happen that is coming from professionals here, where they are saying learners must master the knowledge, must master the content. So when they reproduce the content nicely, then we are saying quality education because they are getting 100%. But there are cases where we are worried about to say, are these learners contribute towards developing our society? When they finish their school, are they developing our society, becoming leaders? And then you start to say, no, they don't do that, because then you start to say they did not get quality education if you interpret them from this side. But if you interpret them from, if you judge them from this side we judge because we know what is right or wrong. It's written there, you just follow it. But this side, they interpret, they don't judge. What they do, they interpret what is there. And then this side, then you have both, because you first understand what is the need, and then if the need is more professional than social, then you go for professional issues. So you are in between nicely. And then using forms of assessment, we are able to interrogate all these issues. Then we come to what we can say, it's a fair way of teaching what we are dealing with. So colleagues, that's what the article was about. And then is there any question that you would like to ask before we go to the next activity? Any question or contribution that you would like to make before we move to the next activity? So it looks like we have to move to the next activity then. Okay, the next activity will be then